You're watching the Movie Dawgs. We bark about the movies and nothing but the movies.
Well, folks, welcome to the anniversary show to the Movie Dogs. It's really hard to know that it's been 10 years that I've been doing this channel, and I've had such a blast. It's certainly a lot of you know there's a lot of struggles to get to this year to this long, or be on this channel this long, and you know, but there's a lot of great memories that I've also managed to have and everything with my kids. Those who have watched for the 10 years have literally watched my kids grow up. The few times that they've been on the channel, and when they were little, especially my daughter, since she was almost like a baby. Um, I met a lot of great people. I got one of them on here right now, Johnathan Steele of Crazy Train Radio. John, um, he invited me this past year or I think it was last year too, wasn't it? To do watch along parties, and I've never done anything like that before until recently, and you got to meet a lot of great people along the way doing that. I said it's broadened my horizon more. It made me more comfortable discussing with multiple people in a forum about movies in general now. But I just you're one of the people who have really been, especially this past year, really helping this channel out and shining more light on it, and I've always been appreciative of that.
Well, you're certainly welcome. And yes, that is one of the aspects that we do with the virtual watch parties. And glad you have joined. Uh, Obviously, we've been doing our thing for almost 13 and a half years. We have regular podcast episodes. We have the watch parties that we started in 2020 of different films. Uh, then, like last night, we had a live with Tim Jacobus from who was
Yeah,
the best known for being the artist of the Goosebumps books, the original run. So like you said, there's always growth in what you do, and there is definitely bumps in the road, as you said. But
oh yeah,
you you know how it goes, and I'm not telling you nothing at hitting the 10-year mark. So it's you find your way, or you get pushed to the side, I guess you should say.
yeah. I certainly, when I started the channel back in 2015, it was more or less, it was known as just the William Baxter experience, and I was kind of riding that wave. Everybody had experience in the title of their channel's name. But Joe Rogan ended up winning that battle, I think, by a landslide. But my channel was originally going to be kind of an homage to the old school cable community access channel.
Okay.
I was going to have local business owners, which I did. I had a few. I had a show called Local Spotlight, which sadly didn't last long, but I got some really good material out of that by those who were participating, and it also helped hone my interviewing skills. Um, but I that, and then plus I started, naturally doing the movie reviews. Um, what was really something that I always had near and dear to my heart because my brother and I were movie buffs, and we always discussed and sat and talked about movies. And that was also because of our parents. Our parents were themselves movie buffs, and they met at a drive-in where they both worked. My dad was a projectionist, and he was back then that was a union job, and he was one of the best in the state of Tennessee. That man could have walked into any place and boom, like a snap of a finger, have a job because he knew his way around a projection. and my mom was, working at the concession booth. So, but and it led to my brother and I wanting to make our own movies in the late '90s, and we did, and we rented them out into the video stores, the local video stores that would be willing to, the mom and pop ones that would be willing to just experiment,
Yeah. Bill, I think you lost you. There we go.
You got me back.
Yeah, you were saying about the rental stores with the home movies and stuff
Yeah,
that you were doing.
yeah, yeah. They were willing to take a chance. We just say, hey, we're not looking for any money or any profit and everything. Just send out our, showcase our stuff and just give us
Okay.
feedback. And we made a pretty decent uh, go at it. I mean, there for a good stretch of time. There, people were liking what we were doing. Um, but then of course things slow down once we started getting our girlfriends and becoming husband and wife, marrying, having kids. But my brother and I still kept it going up till we were working on our last picture up to the point that he died back in 2011. But we were always thinking about transitioning over to YouTube with our movies and starting a show to where we would be like Siskel and Ebert, do our movie reviews and discussion. And
Yeah.
the one thing that people always, I remember getting the kick out, especially at work when my brother and I, because our brother and I work together, they would get a kick out of hearing my brother and I bicker about movies. And, my brother, would talk about a Corey Feldman movie and I would just tear it apart because I'm not a fan of Corey Feldman at all. And
Oh
my
gosh.
brother was. And my brother, and I would mock scenes with Corey Haim or something like that. I would just, like, just, certain, I just, I had this Corey Feldman impersonation where I would mock his dancing and make it look like I was doing a hopscotch, or something like that, and anything that would make my brother laugh. So, but
Yeah.
I thought maybe that, that would have been great. My brother and I would, I think, really would have excelled at YouTube. I always would make the comment that if we had YouTube back in the '90s or the late '90s when my brother and I were really at our creative juices when it came to either filmmaking or discussing movies, things would have probably really been different. So I
Yeah.
mean, but as again, my brother had that charisma. You know, I don't know if I did or not, but I think it. I fed off with him real well, and it was a really good. That's why I always liked having other people on the show with me. I was always able to bounce off somebody real well and talk with them.
And on the YouTube thing, I'll tell you this, it's become a business in itself. So, especially for the
Yeah,
independent artists and stuff. So, it would have been
yeah.
interesting for you guys.
Oh yeah, yeah. It would have been, but I that's one of the reasons why when I started watching YouTube on a regular basis, it was around 2012. Uh, John Campia, love him or hate him, he started AMC Movie Talk, and he started a format that got a lot of attention and it worked. Everybody tried to copy that format when it comes to movie discussion, and a lot of them you know fizzled out. And but I was always thankful for that show, because that filled a void with my brother not being there, and I watched it every morning after I got off work before I go to bed. Because I worked nights, and that was one of my routines was to watch that show, and it was as I said, it filled a void, and I'm always been thankful for that show. Now, when I look back, a lot of these guys that had these big shows that were getting corporate sponsorships and getting perks from a lot of studios that I realized, and especially this past year, I realized that I outlasted a lot of them. I mean, I don't have all the pomp and circumstances like they would do, or some of them did, but some of them got, I thought, a little too big in the head when it came to their product. It almost felt like they were becoming a commercial, and yeah, some of that stuff would be great to have to help progress your show, but for me, I managed to do a lot of my stuff organically, by
Yeah.
word of mouth, promoting myself. I made my own. I would go and get graphics and stuff and make my own openings and stuff, and then I've had a few people, help me out in the process. A good friend of mine, Jason, who helped show me how to use CapCut and UCut. He would, if I'm having some troubles, I'll say, "Hey, can you help me out with this?" And he's helped me out, and I've helped myself, teach myself and evolved my show to, where I feel comfortable at. I don't need to
Yeah.
show my face. I like the old style of podcasting and being on a radio show, which is why you don't see me on the screen as often, if ever. I like that format. I feel
Yeah.
comfortable for it.
And
You don't have to always worry about the camera or going out or anything like that. It's and I always felt, when I'm listening to the radio, I felt more, or a podcast. I don't. I tune out the picture. I'll put my earphones in, and I'll lean back, and I won't even be looking at my phone. So I always felt like, let's have that environment. Let's keep that environment. Maybe I'll evolve to doing, like this. I don't think I'll ever do live, because I see how sometimes you struggle with that. When it comes to stuff, kind of, technology not working in your favor sometimes, and I can see the frustrations. So, but I mean, again, that's one that I think some people, I admire them, for their tenacity and their drive, to entertain. And that's really what we also try to do, and inform. You know, we do a little bit of both when it comes
yeah.
to, showcasing and talking about movies. You got to have that. You got to have that mix, the perfect mix. Do I have it? I don't know, but I try. I try to be a little, throw a few puns here and there, or a joke or something, and um, uh, but and again, I don't. But for me, I think the big thing that I really do is I tell a story. I talk about more of my experience watching that movie for the first time, than I do over analyzing it and giving a review. So, but I really, that's one thing I think sets me apart. I don't know if anybody else does that, but for me, that's what I think is the core to my podcast, is that I'd like to tell the story about my experience watching that movie, whether it's in the theater or at home on VHS, or when I rented it from the video store, or who I was with. Was I, with a girlfriend watching the movie, or was I with my brother, almost getting kicked out of the movie theater, or again, because my brother was a smartass. So, um, but I feel that that right there is, I think, is a key to, trying to be a little different. You know.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not totally comfortable with the video process. The video, because obviously things have changed and a lot of people do
Yeah.
YouTube and different things. But however, and there's I think, a lot of room for growth. So that's why I'm trying to incorporate some of that, but also the old school
Yeah.
style you mentioned. But as well, you mentioned about, sponsorships and things like that. And I've been doing that a little bit in certain aspects, having, you know, small brands and stuff help out with that, because this is all I do.
Yeah.
So, it's sadly the uh, nature of the beast per se, but
Yeah.
I mean, I also don't want to be the corporate shill, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That
And
that that's what I.
And I try to, and it's funny, I was talking to one of those brands today because they've been getting involved with the watch parties. And I'm not a coffee drinker per se, but
Hmm.
it's a coffee brand that I've been dealing with lately. Great guys and all, and I'm not gonna do all that on your show and show for them. I think they'll understand because it's not my brand that you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I try to deal with folks on that side of things on products I would use personally because I
Yeah.
think that's key. And I've had people, uh, I was joking about well, not joking, but what do you call it? Uh, Perfect example, Amanda West from Nightmare on Elm Street
Hmm.
and Fast Times at Ridgemont High and things like that. Uh, she was in my area for a show, and I ended up connecting her with this brand. So if it's somebody people will speak about, I appreciate, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A quality product, if that makes sense. So on
Yeah.
that side of things.
Well, I mean, it's like with Joshua Church, who hosts Quick Bites on my channel. Um, we've known each other longer than we have actually worked together on this channel. I met him. I was actually doing my show when, and he was doing a booth at the Ocala Comic Con one year,
Okay.
and he was, selling his art because he's an amazing artist. And when I went to go do editing that day, the footage was missing. I'm like, God, and that was a good interview that I had with Josh. And that's when we had met. I think it was like 2016. And then the following year, I got him again. He was there again, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do this again with you because, and I explained to him what happened. And then, we did it again. We showcased his art and we talked about it. And then the laptop that we had crashed, and that was a tough year because I was trying to get anything on on the channel at the time, because I didn't have the Movie Dawgs show on at that moment, and I wasn't really doing. I didn't have a full structure of what I was doing, and it wasn't until 2 years later, I ended up finally, releasing a lot of footage from that 2017 Comic Con, like 2019 or 2020. I released it just to put some content on there, but just and then I found out that there was this comic book store that opened in Danella, and I walked in there, and it was Josh. Josh had started a channel or had started his own shop, and we were like, we knew because we always bumped into each other, even because he lived in Danella, and we kept bumping into each other at the local Walmart, and we would just talk, and it just it time went on. I approached him. I said, "Would you mind being a sponsor to this channel? It doesn't cost you anything. I promote your channel or promote your shop for free, and then you just mention the channel." And he was he was all for it, and he would come on as a guest. And again, we would work so well together. And I'm like, he's like, I always wanted to do my own YouTube channel, and I just never have the time because he's busy. He's got kids, he's got his business. It's time consuming. I mean, you'd understand that.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
he's just such a great guy, and we don't agree on everything, which is great. You know, you got to have that. He likes James Gunn's DC. I was more of a Snyderverse guy. And we kind of joke around about that. But at the same time, he's really great with analyzing and giving his viewpoints. And I told him like, listen, would you? And this was like uh, late last year. I said, would you be interested in hosting a little segment show for me? And because I was wanted to expand and do a smaller little format show, and he was all for it, and that's evolved into Quick Bites. And he's done such a great job this past year. I mean, it's just been just. I mean, I have never, my expectations were over succeeded by that show. I mean, it was just I'm just so happy with the way it worked, and next year I'm gonna give Josh a chance to do the A show, the Movie Dog shows. He hosted it last October. He did a review on an independent film, but and I'm lucky to have him on there. I mean, and I have a few other sponsors here and there of people I know personally that have their own business, and then I'm like, because they're mom and pop businesses, I want to help them grow too. So I always
Yeah.
open the door for them, and I don't charge them because I feel like I as a kid, the community here where I live, oh I owe them gratitude because my mom was sick for 10 years with cancer, and the community always helped out with the family. So it was always my way of kind of repaying
Saying
that,
thank you.
giving, yeah, especially when it came to mom and pop businesses, because a lot of people that own these businesses, one of them is family, and he's been operating for 40 years, and he's, that's my blood, and he's always been good. He absolutely, he's smitten with my daughter because, my daughter has that aura that, she can win everybody over. Uh, but but again, I love being able to do that. And plus, I also get to make commercials, which and edit and be a little creative. That's always been the fun part of it. And I've never had anybody go, "Hey, it was okay, but can you change this that?" I've always gotten praises for it, and so I mean, you can find those here on the channel. So, and of course, with my daughter's jujitsu class, that was the first thing I wanted to do was say, "Hey, I'm promoting you guys on because my daughters needed the discipline."
Hmm.
So, but
Absolutely.
again, the mom and pop, you know, because that's what I feel like my channel is. It's a mom and pop run organization, and it just feels natural. As I said, if somebody ever wants to come up to me and say, "I like your brand, can we work on something?" I'm like a coffee brand. If it can get me free coffee and give these caffeine addicts that live in my house free coffee and keep them away from me, that'd be great. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean I understand the nature of how things work, and but I think a lot of the guys that came before me, or a lot of the guys really just started thinking that they were hot shit, and a lot of
Yeah.
guys crashed and burned, I mean, because they weren't being honest. A lot of them weren't being shields to certain people. I mean, I will give my honest. It's like coming to somebody comes up to me with, "Hey, you want to check out my movie that I made?" Yeah, but you're going to get my honest opinion. I mean, you got to
Yeah.
understand. You may not like it. I may critique it. Even if I like it, I'll give you some critiques because I know I've made films, and I used to be an editor for. I did that for a living when I got out of high school. I worked for a production company, and I edited weddings and parties and commercials, and that's where I got my knowledge of to commercials. And that's that when it comes to editing, it's more of a feel in your heart and your eyes. When how to make it to a certain way. When it comes to and that's how editing needs to be. It needs to feel and flow. You have to feel it. And in some scenes, one scene, it can be the smallest little scene. You draw out 1 second too long, it will take a person out of the movie. And I will be always honest about that. I can't bullshit when it comes to movies. If I don't like a movie, I mean, the hardest movie I ever ripped on was King Kong Lives, and that was on my old show, Physical Media Format, where I would review VHSs, and that show right there really pushed the channel um, back in 2019 and 2020. But I really ripped that movie because it's a shitty movie. It just sucks. I mean that first film back in the that in the late 70s, that early Kong, the '76 movie was
Hmm.
really cool. That was a really innovative movie, and it was just really cool. I mean, I watched it as a kid, and it scared the shit out of me as a kid, but it was one of those remakes where it kind of almost surpassed its predecessor. King Kong Lives is actually the biggest pile of dog shit I've ever seen in my life. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of crappy movies, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of crappy movies out there. And that right there is the steam that's on top of that pile. It's that movie. And and I was honest, and one of the comments of one of my friends, who I got to meet through YouTube and all in social media, she's like, "You really hate this movie," and I'm like, "Damn right." But and that's another thing. People, but I'll never tell them don't watch it. I'll say you'll waste your time if you do, but I never discourage a person from watching a movie because what I may not like, they may find as gold. So you never. That's another thing. Don't ever do that. Anybody who's out there who wants to even try being a movie critic or whatever, don't discourage them from going to a movie. You can tell them that you don't like this movie. You can explain why, but don't ever discourage a person from watching a movie because that is just that can lead a person down a path that they'll look at. I've almost made that same excuse. My son, who was a big Star Wars fan as a kid, I ripped the sequel trilogy apart piece by piece. Now I was one of the only ones that did it here on the YouTube format. But he's just tired of hearing about it. He doesn't want to have nothing to do with Star Wars. He's done. He doesn't like nothing about the Disney product in general. But I felt kind of God. I feel a little responsible for that. This generation. Yes, Disney Star Wars has not been up to par as it should be. But we nagged and complained about it endlessly over and over and over for the last 10 years. And the younger generation's like, well, I don't want to deal with it. And you got to understand, every generation will have their own version of what you like. You have to accept
Mhm.
that. You may not like it, but you're going to have to accept it. Um, my daughter, she loved the sequel trilogy. She liked the character of Ray because she's a girl and it appealed to her and it talked to her. I see a little more of the flaws in the story than she did because she's a little kid. She'll figure that out maybe later in life when she's an adult.
Yeah.
But I mean, and there's other things. Of course, I think Kathleen Kennedy's not done a great job with Lucasfilm. She's not a studio head. She's a great producer. She's not a studio head. But and definitely when it comes to creativity, she's not. But I do think that you know we need to be a little more responsible. Unless you're really good with your articulate dialect and your words, like Drinker, I think is one of the best out there that can really sum up a great essay. He's one of the best ones at it, and I admire that because I wish I can be that articulate with my words. But I mean, again, at the same time, don't discourage anybody from watching a movie. I guess is what
I
I'm
agree.
trying to make the point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like Silent Night, Deadly Night, we watched that a few nights ago. I was never really a fan. I
Yeah.
admire, how they took the balls to do something like that. They turned a horror movie, a Christmas theme, the Santa theme, and really got their asses rimmed by it. Back in the '80s, you got to admire the tenacity and the guts that it took to make that movie. That because it was people forget how controversial that movie was. And again, and it's time, it will grow on you. And it didn't bug me like it did back in the day when I saw it in the '90s. Um, and then and of course you can laugh with the sequel. You can laugh at that with the term "garbage day." That has made its meme for the past decade now. And it's you got to it said just be honest and don't discourage while you're trying to be honest.
Perfect example is Jason Goes to Hell with
Yeah,
that. People will go, that is such a shitty movie. That's this, that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Rip and what
yeah,
was he thinking? He was a young director. He was this, he was that.
had to change
But
it up.
yeah, I've always said this, and I've had the conversation with him, and he's had it with other people as well too. That you know what he tried to take when you're talking about the ninth film of a franchise. Yeah, he tried to go a different direction with that, and I always respected that about him. That he, him and his Noel Cunningham, I believe, was involved in it, and another one at another I can't remember his last name, but one of Adam's buddies named Dean was involved as well with the writing and all that stuff with it, and involved with the production. And people shit on the film, but you know
Hmm.
what? It As time has gone on, because we're what, maybe anywhere from 30, definitely under 35 years, but at
Yeah,
least 30 from the when the film came out. I think it might
yeah,
be 32 years. I think it was 93. So,
yeah. That sounds
but
about right.
yeah, it's proven in the analytics that these are the people that went to the theater to see it. They bought the VHS of it. They bought the laser disc. Then they bought the DVD and the Blu-rays and
I
the
used to have, yeah,
yeah. I mean, they
I
bought
used to have the
multiple
poster on my
generations of these
wall.
things. Yeah, they bought multiple generations of this film. So he likes to joke and say, "Well, thank you for buying my pool because the royalties from the sale of this movie over multiple
Exactly.
generation built my pool." So
Yeah,
you shit on it
yeah.
all you
You
want.
can't.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
For you as a podcaster, and I was because as I said, I just do this off by the hip most of the time. But what's the one frustrating thing for you is you know that you think that God, it could be so much easier if what's that one thing that thing that just kind of irks you about podcasting in general?
Hmm. What irks me? Uh, I would, I guess maybe it's because of my personality being from the Northeast and stuff,
Hmm.
but I like, I don't like the wishy-washy parts of dealing with people. Uh,
Hmm.
in terms of, I'm I'm pretty blunt, and I don't know what kind of language and stuff I can use here, but I'll just say there's times, and it's easier now because I have been established at this point and consistent.
Hmm.
Consistency is key. But
Yeah.
say I have to go through like agents and things like that uh, to have certain people on either watch parties or regular episodes. It's they try to butter you up. Oh, let's do this. Yeah, I mean they're two faced, and they're saying one
Hmm.
thing but they mean the other. It's where I'm just point blank blunt. This is what we can do. This is what we want to do. Can we do it? And if that makes sense, I just don't like the two faced side of things because I have no
For
problem
me, it's
walking away from. If I have to walk
yeah.
away from
Me,
whatever it is, I'll walk away.
yeah. That's understandable. That's highly understandable. I'd probably be the same way. For me, as always, when it comes to this, is my anxiety. Days leading up to like what we're doing today, my anxiety level was up and down because I get nervous. Even if I'm just doing it on the show that I know it's just going to be me, I still get nervous. I
Yeah,
don't know why. I get nervous even when it comes to a show with Josh. If because we've been working well together for about almost a year now together. And he's been on the show for 2 years on and off. I still get anxiety. I
yeah,
can't understand why. I mean, like talking, like when it comes to like getting on the watch parties with you guys, I still kind of get a little bit of anxiety going. I have to work myself up, and I still can't understand that. But when I get to it, I'm going along with the current,
yeah.
and it's just
Um,
it gets. Sometimes I feel like maybe it pulls me back, but at the same time, I do overcome it.
yeah. You know, it's funny that you say that about anxiety and stuff, and I'm not going to go down the road of mental health and stuff because we'd
Yeah,
be here all night. But
same here.
it's just funny that I don't really get anxious or anything about uh doing shows and stuff like that. There's times that I'll put it this way for me because I that's all I could speak for
Hmm.
is there's times it's like, maybe there's a little bit of doubt. This episode's going to be the shits, or I'm just going to go along with the beats, and you know what I mean, just do it and hope for the best. But surprisingly, some of those end up being some of the better episodes, which surprised me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, it's
Yes.
like,
Yeah. Oh
it's like
yeah.
okay,
I mean,
I'll do it, but yeah, on the other side, I'm pleasantly surprised about whatever it may be.
yeah. My old boss, he was my mentor when it came to videography and editing and stuff. He always used to tell me this. He said, "Listen, you can go to a wedding, you can film your heart's content. The footage, you may not get the footage you want. It's going to look like shit sometimes, but editing is always the key. You put a
Yeah.
little music on there, you chop it up a little bit, you splice it all together. You may still see the pile of shit that you got, but you sculpted it enough to where everybody else is going to see Picasso, and that's what As long as the people see what they see and they admire and they appreciate it and they like it, you know, and you have entertained, as we pointed out
All right.
before.
Well, here you go. The best way I can describe it for me, and I go with the philosophy of treating it like each episode, like the
Hmm.
regular episodes that I do, which I have a couple this week and get back into it. I had to take a couple weeks downtime for medical stuff, but
Yeah.
it's I treat it like a movie philosophy, and at each episode, I technically do three times, and there's the pre-production once I have somebody booked, doing the homework, all that fun stuff. It's doing, screw it, I can go with that. It's doing the episode, and then the post-production, like you're saying, to release. So it's like,
Yeah.
you got, or something I think is going to turn out like shit. Surprisingly, it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't as bad, when
Yeah.
they're done. Yeah, I mean, so you try, and that's how they do movies. You got the pre-production, script writing, all that stuff. You got the
Hmm.
actual filming, then the post-production. So
Just like when I was working for Walmart, I don't want to. I didn't want to. Your work environment, you is what you make of it. It can be dreadful, yeah, it's stressful, but you got to keep your optimism up as best as you can, or you're just going to be miserable. And you can't. And what I do here on the channel, I can't allow that. I can't allow that mentality. I can't go, oh, I got to make a video. I look every chance I get a chance to make these videos. I'm excited. When Josh sends me his material, I'm excited because one, I'm splicing it up together and I'm editing it together and I'm having a blast doing that. And uh, it's just all about your attitude, and you've got to really, and you can't let other people bum you out with what you're doing either. So I mean, I take the criticisms. I was told, "Oh, your opening's too long," which okay, I trimmed it down. Trimmed it down to like 50 seconds. You do what you can. And plus,
yeah,
I'd also say, listen, if you don't like the opening, that's why I timestamp my stuff. You can always click that button and go forward, press forward.
exactly, exactly.
So, but again, I mean, and I'm looking forward to this coming year. No big changes or no big announcements and everything. I'm just, I'm going to keep doing what I do, and and I know I'm going to enjoy it. And until I don't feel like I'm enjoying this anymore, or it doesn't excite me anymore, then I will say, okay, I've said what I can, and either if I'm lucky, I'll pass this on to someone else who's interested in taking over, or I'll it ends, and I start something else that will excite me and entertain me, and I mean, I do love writing. I do like, and maybe I want to go back and finish my brother and I's movies that did not get completed because when he passed away. Um, but again, at the same time, I don't think I'll ever will walk away from this channel because I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, and this is something that I naturally have allowed to grow. I'm like 700 and something subscribers, but that I did that by myself, you know, word of mouth, as I said earlier, and
Yep,
I'm always thankful for everybody who has come on this show, those who have participated, those who took their time out of their lives to watch my show or just to be on the show. I'm always going to be thankful for these people. I mean, the trailers leading up to this special, those are people who had been on the show or who participated or helped out with the show. I'm thankful for them forever. If they ask me to come on their show, I will make sure that I will make time for that. Every time that you've asked me to invited me on the live show, I'm always going to try my best to when everything, the situations appropriate and everything. I want to be there because I'm I'm always thankful and I'm always grateful and thankful for everybody who's ever taken their time. My kids, some of the funnest moments because of this channel we got to experience when it comes to conventions and watching them grow up and doing their trying to be little podcasters themselves when they were little tykes, and just getting to meet some great people along the way. That's the thing I will always take away from this channel. Just
absolutely.
the memories. So, and again, I always appreciate you. I appreciate you doing this today
Well,
too. To kind of
you're welcome anytime on anything we do. That's for sure. And I'll, I'll close with this. Because you mentioned about some of the people that you meet, and
yeah.
along the way for your 10 years coming up here, which mazel tov. But there's
Thank you.
folks that I never thought I'd interact with, right? Whether it was folks from when I was a kid, I'd see movies and different things on TV and all. But yet,
Yeah.
or to even now, it's like they're some of the most frequent people I talk to. If that makes sense,
Yeah.
it's like a pinch me moment
Mm.
that these
Exactly.
relationships have been built.
I got to meet Chuck Dixon. He was one of my favorite artists and writers back in the '90s, and I got to meet him because of this channel
Yeah,
and
it's
interview him.
and I won't say the person's name, but it's funny, and I tell the story on the watch parties and stuff. And it's there was a time I met somebody from a horror franchise in person, and they said, "Let's grab some McDonald's there, but let's eat outside of the vehicle because they just bought the vehicle." And which okay, cool, yeah, I respect that. Where were we standing, having our little picnic per se, on on a corner literally of Hollywood and Vine, and I look up at the building. It's headquarters for Netflix, and it was one of those "What in the hell am I doing here?" moments.
Where is Netflix? Is that here in Florida?
No, California, L.A.
Is it California? I thought they had offices out here in Florida too,
They
but
might, but I was just looking at like one of their main. It's like, what in the hell am I doing here? Kind of moments.
yeah, I can relate to that. That is something that
Yeah, it's like the old Sesame Street line or whatever it is. One of these things is not like the other.
yeah.
And 9 out of 10 times I'm pointing at myself for that. But
Well, Jonathan, I really appreciate you doing this and kind of helping me bounce off and everything. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to it just be me sitting in front of a TV and just
yeah,
stroking my ego or anything like that. But
no,
somebody that I can relate to.
yeah, no, you can stroke the ego once everybody's up in the house, but just close the bedroom door when you're done that.
Okay.
Right on.
I always get my private time in the car anyway, so it's
Oh, no, ignore the red and blue lights behind you then, since you're stroking your ego. But
all right. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for this, and everybody, thank you for the 10 years. This is from the bottom of my heart. This has been one of the amazing things that I've created that I can say that that's taken a life out of its own, and everybody, I appreciate it, and please continue to watch. As I said, I'm going to keep doing what I do, and whatever is that formula is, I hope we can keep going and bring more viewers and bring more, shine the light, on more movies. I love barking about them and taking a bite out of movies as is the slogan, to everybody that, and it'll be on the descriptions to those people who I'm going to give thanks to. But again, thank you so much. And it means so much to me. And Johnathan, thank you, sir, very
Yes, sir.
much.
Yes, sir. And congratulations on the 10 years.
Thank you.